Hey Zach, and I'm not sure if this is going to be helpful for you or not, but I'm going to make a little video, and maybe this is something that I'll do starting in the fall for the new students. Since I know that you guys are online students, are just often left to figure things out on your own. With my face-to-face classes, we work through these one by one, chapter by chapter, and I walk around and I check them, and they're helping each other, and so it is a lot easier, I know. And so anyway, I'm just gonna give you some guidance, like you said, and then you can tell me if it's helpful or not. You might know all the stuff that I'm about to tell you, but it doesn't sound like you had the verb chart. When I was looking at your exam, it looked to me like you were conjugating verbs correctly, but you just weren't putting them in the correct spaces. Or it looks like you maybe weren't looking at the subjects right. I couldn't figure out because your verbs all look great, but they just were misconjugated for the subjects that were in those sentences. So in Spanish 1, we had three categories of verbs. We had our regular verbs, regular ARs, ERs, and IRs, and all those verbs have the same endings. And there are, if you look here on the verb chart, it says regular AR, regular ER, regular IR, and I gave you hablar, comer, and vivir as examples. But so if you conjugate those all the way across, you'll see you can memorize those endings, or you don't even have to memorize them, but you can see them there. And then what I'd ask you to do is in the back here to write all the other verbs that are follow the same pattern that have those same endings as ARs, ERs, and IRs. And I gave you the page numbers there. And these I allowed you to put your English translations there, so you didn't have to memorize the meanings of any of those verbs. You could have had them there. So on the test, when you see, oh, there's a AR verb there, I wonder if that's regular, stem changing, or irregular, or whatever, and then you go here to this list here, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a regular AR verb. It conjugates like this one here, like hablar, so it has the same endings. So that's the first category, the regular AR and ER and IR endings. And then there's the second category, and these don't follow a pattern. Those are irregular verbs. Verbs like ser, verbs like estar. Those ir, those verbs are conjugated. They're one of a kind, nothing like it, and that's why there's no other verbs like them. So because it's one of a kind. But if in the test you need to conjugate any of those verbs, you've got them conjugate all the way across. Or one of a kind. All of the conjugations are here, so you should be able to use that for that. Then the third category are your stem changing verbs. Stem changing verbs follow patterns. So, for example, dormir, that's a O to UE. You put dormir conjugate all the way across, and then you put the other verbs that are like it, the O to UE right here. All the other verbs are like it here with the English translations. So on the test, if you see, oh, there's this, how do you conjugate this verb? Oh, it's in this category right here. It conjugates like dormir, so it has that stem change in it. So that's the three in Spanish 1. That's the three areas, the three that you had to worry about, and they're all here. So you should never make any mistakes on any verbs, unless you're having trouble looking at a sentence and figuring out what the subject is, because the subject determines, the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. That's what tells you how it's going to be conjugated. If you see anything with y-tú in it, it's always going to be vosotros. If you see anything with y-yo, it's always going to be nosotros. But you see, like, for example, if it's just Juan, it's going to be él. If it's Maria, it's going to be ella. It's Juan and Maria, it's going to be ellas. So you have to know how to take those names and transfer them over to convert them over to these pronouns to know how you conjugate it. So anyway, that's Spanish 1. Spanish 2 is similar because, again, we have regular AR, ER, and IR preterite verbs, past tense verbs. And again, you put your pattern here, your example here, and then on the back here, well, you don't have to actually, because the regular verbs are regular in the present tense too. So we can look at the present tense and we can say, okay, that's a regular verb, so it's going to conjugate in the regular way. So we didn't have to make another list of regular verbs because we've already got them from Spanish 1 in the first chart. Then we've got our irregular verbs, which are one of a kind again. So we put those here. They're not going to be on this list back here, the list of verbs, because they're each one of a kind. But if you see those verbs come up on the exam, then you know, okay, it's a regular verb. it conjugates this way, and this is the only one like it, so I know that it's going to be on here somewhere. And then you got, again, your stem changing verbs. Stem changing verbs are a little bit, they're different than the present tense, different ones. And so for that reason, stem change model is here, and then there's a list in the back. If you look here, we get the U stem, J stem, stem O to UE, where you list them. Here's the page number where you are. Just list the other verbs that are like that, that conjugate like the ones in your pattern here. One thing that Spanish 2 has that's not past tense is the reflexive verbs. If you look here in sentarse, all the reflexive verbs end with se, and when you put those in a sentence, you have to make that se agree with the subject. So if the subject's yo, it's going to be me. If subject's tu, it's going to be te, etc. And that one also happens to be a stem change. So you got to watch those, because this sentarse, you've got the ending, right? The present tense ending. That's regular, and then you got the stem change from the present from Spanish 1, and then you got the ending there. So there's a lot on that reflexive that's hard, but if you, my hope was at least that you guys would be using these charts all along and not go to your book, because I mean, this isn't a course in helping to figure out how to use a book, and I'm giving you a cheat sheet for the verb because I know there's a lot of changes, but you have to memorize all that vocabulary. That's a big thing. But if you've been using these in Spanish 1 to do your tests all along, do your homework all along, which is what I kept telling you guys, then by the time you got to the exams, then you're old hat at it. You pull out your chart, you know where everything is. It's in your handwriting, and you put it on there as you went along, so you know how to use that. I don't give students these charts with all the answers in it because I want you to be working on as you go along and learning as you go along. So that's probably something I need to make clear to students in my online classes, and how to do this all along, kind of help them all along. And I haven't, and so I just appreciate you bringing that to my attention, because that's important. That's going to make a big difference in your grades. In the past, we just expect students to memorize all this. We won't allow them to use any cheat sheets. So the cheat sheet idea is a kind of new thing, and I'm learning about that. But I don't know if that helps you any Zach, but like I said, if you want to work on these verb charts, figuring out how to use them, and if you want to try the test again, then I'm happy to give you a second chance, okay? Hope that helps. Talk to you later.